Welcome to the third part of the Baby Yoda modeling session. For the new viewers here, this video is part of the series called How to Make a Baby Yoda in Blender. If you guys want to find out how we created the base mesh, feel free to go to the first two videos prior to this one. But if you just want to learn how to sculpt and base mesh, then feel free to stay and watch. From our previous session, we were able to create the facial feature by modifying the vertices of a UV sphere and extruding new faces. In this part, we're trying to fix the base mesh so we can subdivide the model without any sharp edges or unwanted cuts. So I basically used the knife tool with the shortcut key K and created few slices to define the eye region. Now this isn't exact science, but what we're trying to achieve is some proper distribution of vertices and edges, hence avoiding the large faces which can't be subdivided automatically. In this part, I'm checking if the vertices have been duplicated. So to avoid duplication, you simply grab some of the vertex and then check by pulling it by the Command Shift key. We now subdivide most of the large faces in the eye region. We do the same in the mouth region. And aside from using the knife tool, we can define the mouth by extruding faces by the Command key E. We also use the Move command by the shortcut G to move the vertices. And since we're using the mirror, we're also checking for open faces. It is good practice to move from the X and Y coordinate to check if the extrusion is proper and if we move the vertex in the right direction. I recommend using the Command G followed by the direction. So in our case, it can be either X, Y, or if you want to move it up, you press Z. And since I'm satisfied with this part, we can use this Shade Smooth to check subdivided version. In this part, I moved on to the Sculpting UI interface, simply to check the symmetry. Now checking via Shade Smooth. I'm quite satisfied with the base mesh. In the sculpting UI, after checking symmetry, we make sure that the symmetrical tool is similar to the mirror modifier, which is usually along y-axis. Now this saves us some time because we're gonna be working on the half face that will be mirrored in the other side. It is also good practice to move back and forth to the layout editor to modify the low poly version, and then use the highly subdivided version in sculpting. I'm now going to create sims for proper UV wrapping. This way, we can isolate Yoda's ear from his face. The ear region should be properly defined, hence it needs a proper unwrapped UV. In the UV editing, the unwrapped UV is shown on the left section, while the 3D viewport is shown on the right. You may now arrange the UV map, which we can use for color maps, roughness map, normal map, displacement map, so on and so forth. For this part, my pipeline is to move to Adobe Photoshop for much faster raster manipulation. Any photo editing tool can be used, such as GIMP, Gira, or even Paint++. Remember, the more open source we support, the more applications and tools we can use in the market. I'll fast forward this time lapse since UV unwrapping is usually a repetitive task and I don't want you guys to get bored with it. So let's move on with the sculpting again. I commonly use the draw tool to distort, also the distort tool, the snake distortion, the sharp sculpt, and the smooth options. I also use the masking for details. For now, let's start with big shapes such as the cheeks, the eye, the eyebrow, the forehead region, and the nose. I'm now fixing the eye socket proportions as compared to the reference photo. Working on a reference side by side with your 3D layout is an effective way to estimate the facial proportion quickly. Let's move on to the ear region. I am now using the mask tool in the ear region. Try to imagine Yoda's ear as an enlarged human ear. So if you want more reference, simply check the mirror. One thing to note though is that Yoda's ears move along with the character's emotion. So we don't want to make that feel a bit rigid. It should be movable once we want to rig it, or at least once we pose it for rendering. Let's focus on the forehead and the nose bridge. This is a tricky area that needs more definition. I am now satisfied with the basic shape of the nose, so I guess I can go and make the nostril area and define the holes. To do this, we simply use masking and the sharp edge tool. The forehead region is a bit tricky too. We don't want Baby Yoda to appear angry even with a defined forehead. We do this by smoothing and sometimes pulling the area along Z-axis to reduce the sharp angry look whenever a human frowns. So even though we have that definition, Yoda should have a baby and infantile emotion. So we don't want to overly define it. One of the tricky part about Yoda is that even at a very young age, the character already has wrinkles on the side of his eyes. So try to imagine Benjamin Button. Anyway, the faces on this area, they need fixing. So we go back to the layout editor. As you can see, this area isn't properly defined. And they have a common vertex. So let's try to fix that. One thing to note though is that the detail still follow the direction of the edges. Hence, common vertex connection from multiple edges pulls the definition whenever we're sculpting. That is why having a proper base mesh with proper contour definition make the sculpting much easier. Since we've applied the mirroring, we need to do the subdivision on the left side as well. Going back to the sculpting, we can now define the wrinkles. Working on the 3D sometimes can be tricky. For example here, I'm removing an unwanted masking at the back of his head. We do this via the Alt plus the masking tool. Let me fast forward on the material selection. I created a green base color with the red subscattering layer. I also set the roughness to a high value to remove the shiny effect. I recommend setting the specular to a low value too. Later on, we will replace the material values with maps created via Texture Paint or via Photoshop. But for now, let's simply provide the face with a simple skin material for better sculpting. Having a proper material makes the sculpting much easier. I'm now creating more details and interchangeably fixing the proportion with respect to the reference. So in the next video, I'll be starting with a properly sculpted bust model of Yoda. I'll create the maps and we'll assign it in our shader via nodes. I'll discuss them while trying to recreate the process and how I achieved the end result. So if you're watching this in real time, expect a few days delay before I can upload the fourth video. But in any case you're watching in the future, simply click the skip button to move to the next section. And that's it. Just remember to click subscribe, like and share. And I do hope this helps you a lot. See you in the next video.